Patty Jenkins proceeds to to burn bridges with Warner Brothers on the way out.
Oh yeah. Uh Patty Jenkins, of course, did the first Wonder Woman movie, which was a good movie. Um,
She had a lot of help, though.
she had a lot of help, yes. And yeah, and from what I hear, I think she was just the director on that movie. She didn't really have any other creative input into it. Um, but then we had Wonder Woman 84.
Also, I've heard rumors that Zack Snyder himself shot that last act in Wonder Woman,
It wouldn't surprise me if he did. It was very Snyder-esque.
which means it was CGI and nonsense.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that is the one part of that movie I didn't like was that last fight with her and Ares where it was just
I've also heard disagreement about whether she directed the action scenes in that movie, but that's speculation.
yeah,
Like
that's
when you think about
speculating.
how much slow mo there was in some of those fight scenes, like that's very Snydery.
Yeah, yeah. But so rumor a bunch of rumors started coming out that she quit she rage quit Wonder Woman 3 because the executives and people didn't like her initial outline for Wonder Woman 3.
Hmm.
Apparently, from the some of the rumors I've heard, is that she wanted to bring Steve Trevor back again.
Via a Lazarus pit of all things.
Yeah. And why? She okay. Part of me wonders if maybe she has just like a huge crush on Chris Pine and just wants to keep him around.
I mean, that's not. I can understand that.
Yeah, yeah. But
I'm not
so
even attracted to him, and he's magnetic through the screen, so I can't even imagine what he's like in person.
yeah, yeah. Um, so the studio said no. Why don't you write something else? And then she said, "No, you don't understand these characters. You don't understand character arc and da da da." And
Oh
apparently,
my god.
yeah, and apparently in the email she sent to the executive, it included a link to the Wikipedia page definition of character arc.
Yeah, people have been calling her Petty Jenkins lately.
Yeah. And so then other things started coming up. Like, so she was originally going to direct Rogue Squadron, Star Wars, and then she left that. And some of the rumors around that were because she and Kathleen Kennedy couldn't agree on anything. Which,
Two Karens fighting it out.
yeah, who's shocked by that? Nobody.
I want to see the manager. I am the manager. I know. I want to see your manager. Get me to Chapek.
Yeah. Yeah. So with all of this, Patty Jenkins decides to respond to it, and she releases a statement, and it was just the most. Uh, would you call it passive aggressive?
Yes. It
Yeah.
sounds like she's trying to justify herself, but she just kind of admits a big chunk of what she was being accused of.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. So
No,
firstly,
officer, I wasn't speeding. I was just going fast because the Starbucks was almost out of pumpkin spice.
yeah, yeah.
But similar levels of trying to defend yourself.
Yeah, yeah. Well. I was going to pay my taxes, but I was just waiting for the right time.
Yeah, I mean,
Um, but so right off the bat, she starts the statement off with sigh.
yes, that's how a professional begins their statements.
Yes, yes, sigh, sigh.
To
Okay,
go back a moment, can you
yes.
imagine how much this statement that cavils all class and all that?
Oh yeah.
Imagine if it, sigh, I have just had a meeting with James Gunn. That would have completely changed the tone.
Oh yeah, yeah. So we get sigh, which is just incredibly childish.
Yep.
And so she says, I'm not one to talk about private career matters, but I will not allow inaccuracies to continue. Here are the facts. Um, when there started being backlash about Wonder Woman 3 not happening, the attractive clickbait false story that it was me that killed it or walked away started to spread. This is simply not true. I never walked away. I was open to considering anything asked of me. It was my understanding that there was nothing I could do to move anything forward at this time. DC obviously buried in changes that they are having to make, so I understand these decisions are difficult right now. So,
So,
translation.
uh, no, I wasn't fired. They simply invited me not to work there anymore, and I didn't object too much, even though I would come back.
Yes. She continued. I
Yes.
do,
Oh, he didn't cheat on me. He just found a woman he enjoys spending time with. That isn't me, and that's okay.
oh, damn.
I'm in a savage mood, man. I've been working a lot of overtime this week, so
Yeah. I actually like Savage DB.
the Savage DB issue number one.
Yes. She continued. I do not want what has been a beautiful journey with Wonder Woman to land on a negative note. I have loved and have been honored to be the person who got to make these last two Wonder Woman films. She's an incredible character living in and around her values makes one better person every day. I wish her and her legacy an amazing future ahead with or without me.
So that's the part where she's trying to have like the grace of saying that Henry Cavill talking about how Superman will continue without him. But
Mhm.
I have loved and been so honored to be the person who got to make these last two Wonder Woman films. She is an incredible character. Living in and around her values makes one a better person every day. A little bit of a humble brag. I've
Mhm.
been in there. You get better every day. I've been getting better every day. I'm great.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, you talk about, like, being up your own behind. This woman is really sounds like she's really up her own behind.
Yeah. And then she goes on to say nice things about Linda Carter and Gal Gadot,
Mhm.
which is funny considering that it sounds like Gal Gadot kicked her off the Cleopatra movie she's going to be in.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's so she and it sounds like too, like, before, with Henry Cavill leaving, she was open to playing Wonder Woman again, even if Patty Jenkins wasn't gonna direct, so,
Yep.
yeah.
But I feel like if Henry Cavill's gone, Affleck and Gal are all gone.
Yeah, yeah, I think everybody's gone, yeah.
Now we might see different actors in different roles. It sounds like they're open to having Henry Cavill in a different role in another DC movie, which would be interesting.
Yeah, and, there are also some rumors floating around that Jason Momoa could be playing Lobo.
Which is much better casting than having him be Aquaman.
Yes. Fits his personality a lot better.
Personality, physique, appearance.
Mhm, yeah. Yeah, he should have been the main man from the beginning.
Yep.
Yeah, but of course, the other interesting thing too is with Rogue Squadron is that apparently she says that she's still working on it and that they're still gonna happen, just like
Well,
Ryan Johnson's
yeah, it's
trilogy
just
is
like
gonna
Ryan
start
Johnson's
happening.
trilogy. Oh
Ah, jeez.
man,
Yeah.
this is so. I think that with this week, barring some really unexpected shakeups,
Mm.
I think we're finally closing the door on the Snyderverse.
I think so too, and, you will not see any mournful tears from me in that regard. I didn't hate the Snyderverse as much as you did, but I
Mhm.
could definitely understand why it's not everybody's cup of tea. And I think it's pretty clear that I've said before, I don't think he really had a very good understanding of the characters. Um, and a traditional superhero movie was not something that he was capable of doing.
Right. He can do a pretty decent
Hmm.
Watchman. He understands cynicism. He understands visual effect. He understands raw emotion.
Hmm.
And he's very good at taking these panels from Frank Miller and whoever the artist was for Watchmen, who I shouldn't be forgetting because he's a big chunk of it too.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Anyways, he's good at adapting panels and recreating them.
Hmm.
Now that's part of the thing though, is that like if you like the Snyderverse, you probably really like Frank Miller deep
Oh
down.
yeah. 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 Batman v Superman was like almost straight out of like the Dark Knight Returns, and
Yep.
yeah. But I mean, they had like there were like two shots where like I mean, one shot at Batman was like straight out of Dark Knight Returns, and then in like Superman getting hit with the nuke,
Hmm.
that was in there, and of course the whole warehouse fight scene with the that was, yeah, but um but yeah, and I think it's, yeah, it obviously not for everybody, and I think DC, I think, should or it sounds like it will under James Gunn move more towards being more traditionally like DC, like DC has been in the past. Probably closer in tone with Marvel, uh, given James Gunn's history working with Marvel. Um, and I it'll be interesting to see what they do. Part of me wonders with Superman, since they're talking about him doing like a younger Superman. I wonder if they're going to do Man of Tomorrow.
That's a good question. Um,
Mm,
now, yeah, I don't want to speculate too much, just
yeah,
because it could go a variety of ways. However, I'm going to make a very seemingly odd comparison.
yeah.
Um, and you might know where I'm going with this. You know what the Snyderverse is?
Oh,
Well, let
yeah.
me paste this image image link in here. Come on, come on.
we need to get the tense music going, like like Film Thread.
So they are Windows Phone.
Hmm.
You might go, the hell do you mean? Just because they were advertising Nokia and Microsoft phones in Batman v Superman and Batman v Superman and Man of Steel,
Yeah.
which I was a Windows Phone fan. I recognized them every time they showed up. They had
Hmm.
this red Nokia tablet that appeared in a few of those movies.
Yeah.
Probably because Nokia paid them millions of dollars to have it in there before they sold their phone business to Microsoft, and then Microsoft ran it into the ground.
Yeah.
So, and we were talking about this earlier. My first smartphone was an Android phone that I really didn't like.
Hmm.
It kind of died on me. And then for a few years, I was a Windows Phone enthusiast because I met somebody who had one, and I looked at this live tile interface, and I just got it.
Hmm.
That's one of those things where it adapts dynamically. Love those. Sarcasm. Uh, I loved this interface. I thought it was fun. I liked watching the photo app slowly run through your photos. I
Hmm.
liked the interface there. I liked being able to swipe right and you suddenly had you're in your nice alphabetical list of your apps, which was easier to access, in my opinion, than on the Android,
Hmm.
and definitely easier to access than on iOS, even to this day. And I have an iPad now, so I can comment on it. Windows Phone came out around the same time that Man of Steel did, actually. Now that I think about it, and there were people who tried it out right away and decided they didn't like it. There, but there were always enthusiasts like me who kept going with it. And because now the thing is, if you had an Android or an iPhone, actually, Daniel, what do you have?
iPhone.
How often in a day do you feel the need to mention to somebody that you have an iPhone?
Never.
Right. I was actually on the assumption you were an Android guy because so you see how often we bring it up.
Yeah.
So, but if you're in this small niche of something that the market is moving on from, and you know deep down that if everybody moves on from it and doesn't go with it, you're done. The
Yeah.
thing you love is going to die. You're going to go out there and you're going to promote the hell out of it.
Yeah.
And that is the Snyderverse in a nutshell. Because in the year 2022, the fandom or the general fandom had two chances to show their strong take on the Snyderverse. Take one, chance one was the Batman. If the Batman had been a complete bomb without Snyder involvement and without Ben Affleck Batman, that would have sent a message.
Hmm.
The second chance was Black Adam. Uh, if Black Adam had broken even, and if they could have done like focus testing that showed, oh yeah, the fact that they tied it to that Snyderverse stuff I love so much, and having Henry Cavill was great.
Hmm.
That did not happen. Neither one of those things happened. The Batman did pretty decently, and then it did a lot of business on HBO Max, which they took to
Yeah.
mean audience engagement.
Hmm.
And uh, Black Adam was ultimately a bomb. And the fact that The Rock put out that, or is either Deadline Hollywood or The Rock was talking about how it was or how it was, how they were talking about how it was profitable. Do you see, oh, you see Tom Cruise having to be on Twitter talking about how Top Gun Maverick was profitable?
No.
No, the conversation didn't come up because it clearly doesn't need to come up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Only a Hollywood accountant could find a way to make Top Gun Maverick unprofitable. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Tom. We ultimately lost money on it.
What?
Yeah, exchange rates and taxes
Yeah. Yeah.
and amortization and
Yeah.
humidity. Yeah, it just didn't work out. Sorry, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the next time you hear somebody talk about how popular the Snyderverse is, think of Windows Phone.
Hmm.
Think of the people who loved this, who made it part of their identity as part of a counterculture thing, which I was guilty of too.
Hmm.
I liked being different.
Yes.
Uh, but at the same time, I liked being different. I liked liking this thing that other people didn't care about in the least. But I also had this inferiority complex because I knew if it didn't hit like 10% of the market, which it did in some countries, but never America or anywhere else important, like in terms
Hmm.
of taste making, it was ultimately going to die.
Yeah.
And you can see them doing the same things I did. When a new model came out, if it was relatively inexpensive, I would buy one. Never mind that doesn't actually help their you know user base at all. I I would buy them for friends. I would occasionally use them as MP3 players just because it was fun to have new hardware to play with. I was
Yeah.
weird. So are the really heavy Snyderverse fans.
Yeah. 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 But yeah, I think it's a good analogy, and yeah, it's one of those kind of I think we could chalk it up as a something that they tried to do. They probably went with it a lot longer than they should have,
Hmm.
and but ultimately it didn't really make much of an impact um, as financially, or and also also even pop culturally. I mean, it's kind of like be kind of like Avatar. It just didn't really stick around.
Yeah, I was about to say that Batman v Superman had more of an impact, and then I remembered that Zack Snyder appeared on Teen Titans Go, which is made by by Warner Brothers. Like it doesn't count if it's your own stuff making fun of your own stuff, like Peacemaker did.
Yeah. Yeah. But but yeah, it we've kind of hit an interesting point right now, and it'll I hope things get better for DC because um Marvel is really has really fallen off in this the last couple of years, and I kind of I disagree with some people who say that there's superhero fatigue. I don't think there's superhero fatigue. I think there's bad superhero movie fatigue.
Hmm.
Um, I still like I like good superhero movies,
Hmm.
and not the mediocre to just god awful stuff we've been getting for the last 2 years.
Right. To continue the Windows Phone analogy,
Mhm,
there were models of Windows Phone that came out that were actually a weird thing before Microsoft bought about. Nokia had actually come out with their own Android phones, and there were some Windows phones that they came out with that were basically using the hardware from those Android phones to use up the stock.
mhm,
Then when Microsoft had bought up Nokia and was making Microsoft Lumia phones, uh, they had a few models that went out the door where you kind of just like, okay, it's like, oh, okay, see, it's still alive. Yeah, it's 1% of the market at this point, but the market is bigger. So they're still selling, millions of phones every year.
mhm.
So they'll keep this going. I said to myself, lying to myself. Like, those were just there to fulfill, those were there to fulfill contracts and to finish things out.
Yeah.
We're in the Microsoft Lumia phase of DC,
Mhm.
of the Snyderverse,
Yeah.
where corporate mismanagement has gotten us to a point where, okay, we have a bunch of stuff that's just about ready to go. We need to figure out what's going to actually work. We can cancel the projects that just are going to have no return whatsoever and just confuse people.
Mhm.
We can release the stuff that will at least not embarrass the brand and defray some of the costs while we wind this down in favor of the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And uh yeah, and it'll be interesting to see, like, how those movies do. Probably, and if one of them ends up being like a big hit, it'll be interesting to see, like, oh, should we stick around with this? No, no, don't stick around with it. Just pass it along to the next movies.
Well, I guess it kind of depends on which one. Like
Mm,
if Flashpoint catches on, well, first off, I'll be shocked because
yeah,
I've only met a handful of people who actually enjoy Ezra Miller's version of the Flash.
yeah.
I think even most Snyderverse fans I like or I know would tell you that it was not great.
Hmm.
But the but if that one manages to do well despite itself, that's a weird mixed signal. But it's like, well, we've already moved on. Sorry, man.
Yeah.
If I think that if Shazam 2 catches us by surprise and is a really good movie that catches on with the audience, I think that that could continue by itself because it is the only. It's actually when you think about it, it's besides Black Adam, which is well, we're not going to count Black Adam for a moment here.
Mhm.
It's the only besides Man of Steel, it's the only superhero that didn't debut in Justice League or around Justice League,
Right.
or debut or get introduced in Batman v Superman or get released in Batman v Superman.
Hmm.
Well, I guess Suicide Squad. No, that's all derivative Batman stuff mostly.
Yeah. Well, you had the Flash that was in there briefly. Yeah. If that, was that what you were referring to?
Oh, no, I'm more referring to villains don't count
Uh,
as far
well,
as far as superheroes go. I think
yeah,
Shazam
yeah.
was the only superhero solo movie they had that besides Man of Steel that wasn't introduced in Batman v Superman.
Right. Yeah.
Um, if that does well, they could keep that going. I think
Mhm.
that could just be its own independent thing, and you just ignore the fact that a guy who was supposed to be Henry Cavill but wasn't showed up at the end of the first one.
The first one. Yeah. Ugh. Oh.
Uh, Meanwhile, if Blue Beetle does well for itself, that'll just be, as far as I'm aware, totally unrelated, and that could they could dovetail it into whatever they're making next.
Yeah. But but yeah, it'll you know, I know I know a lot of people are tired of reboots,
Hmm.
but I think this is one franchise that desperately needs one.
Yep, just to make it clear, nope, this isn't related to that stuff you didn't like.
Hmm.
I will say one last thing is I think that the Snyderverse, as it was conceived, is a product of Dan Didio era DC having too much say in it.
Hmm.
Because think about DC Comics, where like I've heard Chuck Dixon in his show talk about how at DC, I forget if he was literally told this or if he was effectively told this,
Mm.
where it's like, oh yeah, 1986 was the best year DC ever had and will never surpass it.
Mm.
Because it's like, oh, that was the year that Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns came out.
Mm.
And that everything was them kind of just, oh, we can't ever beat that. We'll just, live off of live off of that grain that we stored.
Mm.
And what did those comics tell them? Oh, people want serious things, not ongoing things. Dark and gritty is the way to go. And when you
Mm.
look at like their results for the next 2 decades, 3 decades, they kept getting the same message. Oh, people didn't like Superman Returns. Never mind that it was a financial flop, mostly because you wrapped up all that Superman Lives budget into it for accounting purposes with Nicolas Cage Superman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah. Like the market kept telling them, "Oh yeah, Green Lantern with Ryan Reynolds, who's with none of his usual charm. Let's let's let, let's just ignore. Let's just toss that out, right?"
Right. Yeah.
What they kept getting the message of, and this has happened in the comics too. The only thing people care about is Batman, and it better be dark. Damn it.
Yeah. 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 Get your Christopher Nolan Batman. Yeah.
Yeah. So I truly believe that at this stage, uh, we are due for a course correction, not just in how Gunn is running the movies, but
Hmm.
just in terms of how DC as a whole sees itself. If they can get back to that weird Silver Age flair of, not like, we don't want complete insanity, but like just a touch of that whimsy.
Yes. I would agree. Yeah. And